Ever have one of those moments? You're sitting alone, and suddenly you realize, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I show up every day. I work hard. I try to stay positive, stay organized, stay focused. I check every box people told me to check: school, job, responsibility, effort, and yet somehow, life still feels strangely out of reach. No progress, no clarity, no sense of being any closer to the life I'm trying so hard to build. And that's the part that scares you the most. Not that you're failing, but that you're trying, really trying, and nothing is changing. So you start to wonder, if I'm doing everything right, why does none of it feel like it's working? And here's the part nobody tells you. It's because you're standing in the middle of a storm with no shelter, no directions, and an instruction manual written for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Part 1. Why the present feels heavier than the future. Feeling lost in your 20s isn't about lacking motivation. It's about waking up every day inside a life that feels too big, too fast, and too uncertain to hold. It's wondering how everyone else seems to know what they're doing while you're just trying to keep your head above water. Because here's the truth no one says out loud. Being young today feels like someone handed you a 1,000-piece puzzle, but forgot to include the picture on the box. You're expected to build a career, manage your mental health, stay fit, find love, avoid debt, be productive, be social, be independent, and somehow figure out your purpose. All yesterday. It's not just overwhelming, it's impossible to do all at once. And yet everyone talks to you like it's normal, like you should already know exactly who you are and where you're going, so you start thinking something's wrong with you. But it's not you, it's the volume of your life, the never-ending decisions, the pressure to perform, the comparison game you never meant to play. You're not lost because you're behind. You're lost because no one prepared you for a world moving this fast. And the moment you understand that, the pressure stops feeling personal, and you finally see what's really going on. Part 2. The real reason you feel lost. Here's something no one admits out loud. Most young adults today aren't as stressed about the future as they are about the present. The real panic isn't where will I be in 10 years? It's how am I supposed to survive this week? Because the truth is, you're not sitting around worrying about some distant career path. You're overwhelmed because the job you already have is consuming every part of you. You're expected to work late, learn fast, stay reachable, master every new tool, Excel, Tableau, AI software, and somehow keep proving your worth every week so as to not get replaced or overlooked or left behind. You don't have the luxury of thinking about long-term stability. You barely have the energy to breathe. And outside of work, life doesn't slow down for a second. Rent is high. Groceries drain your wallet faster than you can refill it. Dating is a rotating door of apps, situationships, avoidance, and people who want connection but fear commitment. Making friends as an adult feels harder than discovering a new planet. Housing is priced like a joke nobody laughs at anymore, and everyone keeps telling you that these are the best years of your life. So of course you feel unstable, not because you're irresponsible, not because you're lost, not because you should have it all figured out, but because the world you entered is more demanding, more expensive, and more mentally draining than anything your parents ever had to face. They grew up with structure. You grew up with speed. They grew up with predictability. You grew up with volatility. They grew up with time. You grew up with pressure. You're not struggling because you lack direction. You're struggling because you're expected to build direction while carrying a full load of stress you never asked for. This isn't a personal failure. This isn't you being behind. This is you trying to build a life in a system that drains you before you can even start planning one. And the moment you finally understand that, the shame softens, the guilt eases, and something becomes clear. You're not the unstable one. Your world is unstable, and you're doing everything you can to stay upright inside it. Part 3. The pressure to figure it all out. Another reason your 20s feel so heavy is because you're expected to know who you are before you've even had the chance to become anyone. Everywhere you look, someone is asking, what's your plan? What's your purpose? What are you doing with your life? As if adulthood comes with a syllabus and you somehow miss the first page. But here's the part nobody tells you. You can't build identity on command. You build it through experiences, not expectations. And yet the world acts like you're supposed to show up to your 20s, fully formed, fully confident, with a clear path and a clear passion. So what do? You start comparing. not because you're insecure, but because your brain is wired to scan for patterns, to make sense of chaos, to measure where you stand, and comparison turns into pressure. I should know by now. I should feel more certain. I should be further ahead. But here's what's real. The pressure to figure it all out comes from the belief that identity is something you declare when in reality, it's something you discover by trying things, failing at things, and learning yourself in the process. Clarity isn't a deadline, it's a result, and it arrives slowly, through movement, not through certainty. You're not lost because you're behind. You're lost because you're in the part of life where nobody knows who they are. They just pretend they do. Part 4. Why you keep comparing your life to everyone else's. Comparison hits hardest in your 20s because this is the first time in your life you don't have shared milestones anymore. Growing up, everyone moved together. Same grades, same semesters, same timelines. Then suddenly, adulthood begins, and everyone scatters in different directions at different speeds. Your friend gets married, another buys a house, another is still unemployed. There's no longer a normal. There's just noise, and your mind, craving stability, tries to create order out of chaos by comparing, not because you're insecure, but because your brain is trying to make sense of a world where there are no synchronized timelines anymore. And here's the part nobody tells you. Comparison isn't about other people. It's about your fear of choosing wrong, your fear of wasting time, your fear of falling behind in a race you never agreed to run. You're not comparing lives, you're comparing timelines in a chapter where no two timelines are even remotely similar. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels personal. It's not envy, it's uncertainty. And the moment you see that, comparison loses its power over you. Part 5. Stop chasing timelines, start chasing alignment. One reason your 20s feel so overwhelming is because you're taught to judge your life by timing instead of by who you're becoming. By now, I should be here. At this age, I should have that. I should already know what I'm doing. These thoughts aren't random. They're inherited from parents, from culture, from older generations who grew up in a world where milestones were predictable and timelines actually meant something. But in your world, timelines don't mean anything anymore. People get married at 22 or 42. People change careers at 25 or 55. People find purpose after 3 tries or 30. So here's the shift. Stop asking, am I on time? Start asking, does this actually align with me? Because when you chase the timeline, you end up forcing your life into shapes that don't fit. You rush into relationships you're not ready for. You stay in jobs that drain you. You pick goals that look good but feel wrong. You perform confidence instead of building it. But alignment is different. Alignment is choosing the path that matches your identity, not the one that matches expectations. It's choosing the direction you can actually live with, not a milestone that checks a box. And the moment you shift from timing to alignment, your decisions stop feeling like guesses and start feeling like clarity. Not because everything is figured out, but because you're finally choosing from identity instead of pressure. Part 6. Quit trying to catch up. There's no one to catch up to. You ever notice how everyone your age seems to be sprinting? Someone's buying a house, someone's engaged, someone just switched jobs and magically doubled their salary. Someone's traveling, networking, building their brand, while you're just trying to get through your inbox without having an existential crisis. But here's the trap your brain falls into. You think you're behind them, but you're not even running the same race. One person had parents who paid their tuition, another had savings, another had none. Someone grew up in chaos. Someone grew up with a safety net. Someone got lucky with timing. Someone got destroyed by it. Different families, different money, different opportunities, different mental health, different luck. So how could you possibly be behind someone whose starting line is nothing like yours? That comparison isn't just unfair, it's delusional. But your brain doesn't know that. It only sees the visible part of someone else's life and fills in all the missing gaps with fantasy. You're not comparing your life to theirs. You're comparing your life to the story your mind invented about them. And you always lose against an invented story. Here's the truth nobody teaches you in your 20s. There is literally no one to catch up to. Not your friends, not strangers online, not people your age, not people younger than you, not even your future self you imagined at 10 years old. That version of you never lived in this world. You did. And that matters. Your 20s aren't about speed, they're about building direction. Some people hit milestones early and collapse under the weight of them later. Some people bloom late and build lives that last. There is no prize for being first, but there is a cost for living someone else's timeline instead of your own. When you finally stop trying to catch up, you stop rushing choices, you stop forcing timelines, you stop pretending you're late to something, and you finally have space to ask, what pace actually works for me? Because that's the only pace you'll ever be able to sustain. Hey, if you've ever felt behind, confused, or overwhelmed, you're not lost. You're human. And if you want more videos that dive into identity, purpose, and the psychology behind modern life, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and let's figure it out together. Part 7. Your 20s are about exploration, not perfection. One of the biggest lies you absorb growing up is the idea that your 20s are for getting everything right. The right career, the right partner, the right timing. But here's the psychological truth. Your 20s aren't about perfection. They're about information. You're not meant to have your life figured out. You're meant to gather the data that eventually builds your life. Trying different jobs doesn't make you flaky. It makes you self-aware. Leaving relationships that don't feel right doesn't make you broken. It makes you honest. Changing direction isn't failure. It's feedback. Exploration is how you learn your strengths, your limits, your values, your pace, and your actual identity, not the identity you inherited or the one you think you should have by now. The pressure to pick perfectly comes from older generations who grew up in a world where every choice was permanent. Jobs lasted decades, relationships lasted a lifetime, cities felt stable. Your world doesn't work like that, so perfection isn't realistic, and more importantly, it's not useful. Exploration builds identity. Perfection builds anxiety. The more you experiment, the more you learn the shape of the life that fits you, not the life that looks good on a resume or that makes other people comfortable. Your 20s are supposed to be messy. They're supposed to feel like trial and error. They're supposed to feel like guessing sometimes. Guessing is how you learn. Trying is how you grow. Redirecting is how you evolve. When you stop treating your 20s like a test you can fail and start treating them like a laboratory, everything changes. You stop asking, what if I make the wrong choice? And start asking, what can this choice teach me? That's the shift that actually helps you build a life, not just perform one. Part 8. Skills versus status. One of the quiet reasons your 20s feel so uncertain is because the world trains you to obsess over status instead of actual skill. Job titles, aesthetic careers, fancy offices, cool-sounding roles on LinkedIn, the illusion of being impressive. But here's the truth. Nobody tells you early enough. Status looks good. Skills change your life. Status can be taken away. Skills cannot. A title can disappear with one corporate reorg. A company can fold in a year. A resume bullet loses value the moment it becomes outdated. But skills? You carry them into every version of your future. The ability to communicate clearly, think critically, solve ambiguous problems, write well, learn fast. These compound like interest. They become the foundation of every job you'll ever have and every opportunity you don't even know exists yet. And here's the psychological twist. Most people chase status because it gives them immediate validation. It looks like progress. It feels like certainty. It temporarily quiets the insecurity of not knowing what you're doing. But real confidence doesn't come from sounding important. It comes from knowing you can handle things. Status soothes insecurity. Skill builds identity. And the moment you shift from chasing impressive things to learning useful things, your anxiety drops. Your direction sharpens. Your opportunities multiply because skills are portable, transferable, inflation-proof, layoff-proof, economy-proof, and no algorithm can take them from you. Your 20s are not the time to look successful. They're the time to become capable. That's the real cheat code. The people who end up thriving in their 30s and 40s are rarely the ones who looked impressive early on. They're the ones who built competence quietly while everyone else was performing. So ask yourself, what skill can I build this year that my future self will thank me for? Because one good skill can open more doors than a dozen impressive titles ever will. Part 9. The real choices we make. One of the biggest reasons your 20s feels confusing is because nobody teaches you how to choose people. Not romantically, not in friendships, not even professionally. You're taught to look for chemistry, compatibility, vibes, or someone who fits your idea of what your life should look like. But here's the psychological truth. In your 20s, you don't choose people. You choose fantasies. Fantasies about who someone could become. Fantasies about the relationship you hope it turns into. Fantasies about the version of yourself you think you'll be with them. And those fantasies are powerful because they protect you from uncertainty, from loneliness, and from the fear of choosing wrong. But here's the cost. You end up ignoring who someone actually is in favor of who you hope they'll turn into. You overlook patterns, you excuse behavior, you stretch your boundaries, you shrink your identity, you confuse potential with commitment. This is how smart people end up in painful relationships, not because they're blind, but because they're hopeful. Hope without information is how you get stuck. The real skill of your 20s is learning how to see people clearly, not the curated version, not the fantasy, not the potential, but the patterns. Patterns tell you everything. How they respond when they're stressed, how they handle conflict, how consistent their effort is. Choosing people is less about romance and more about psychology. Does this person create safety? Do they communicate honestly? Do they show up consistently? Because here's the truth. You don't need perfect people. You need aligned people. People whose values fit yours, whose pace matches yours, whose presence calms your nervous system, not activates your anxiety. People you can build with, not perform for. When you learn to choose people instead of fantasies, your relationships stop draining you and start shaping you, and the confusion that once felt like heartbreak starts to look like clarity. Part 10. What actually matters now. After everything we've talked about, the overwhelm, the comparison, the pressure, the timelines, the uncertainty, there's one truth that quietly sits underneath it all. Your 20s aren't about getting life right. They're about getting life real. Real skills, real identity, real clarity. The world you grew up in doesn't have the structure your parents had. It doesn't have the same stability, the same roadmap, the same guarantee that if you do A, you'll get B. So what actually matters now is learning to build a life that works in reality, not in nostalgia, not in comparison, not in someone else's expectations. And the psychology behind it is simple. Identity comes before answers because you can't make the right life choices until you know what kind of life fits you. Before the career, before the relationship, before the goals, you need to know yourself first. Otherwise, every choice feels wrong, not because it is wrong, but because it wasn't made for the person you actually are. Direction comes before meaning. Experimentation comes before wisdom. You're not supposed to have everything figured out. You're supposed to be gathering the ingredients that will eventually make your life make sense. You don't need a perfect plan. You need one that's honest, a plan that actually fits who you are. And here's what an honest plan actually looks like. It's not a 5-year blueprint. It's not a master timeline. It's not a checklist for the rest of your life. An honest plan starts with 3 things. 1. What you value right now. Not what you should value. What genuinely matters to you today. 2. What matters enough to invest in. Is it a skill, a relationship, your health, stability? Pick one and move toward it. 3. What pace can you realistically sustain? Not the pace that looks impressive. The pace that doesn't break you. If you know those 3 things, you already have more direction than most people ever get in their 20s. Everything else gets built from there. A life you can sustain, a pace you can live with, people who feel like home, skills that make you capable, values that keep you grounded, a direction that feels honest, not easy, not perfect, but yours. And once you see that clearly, once you understand that the rules have changed and you're allowed to build something different, a question starts to rise inside you, not a fearful one, a freeing one, the question that shapes everything that comes next. Do I actually want to live like my parents did?